DeWine runs a state hit hard by this virus. And when it first arrived, there were many lawmakers concerned about the rules that could hurt the economy, especially on the right, or eliminate jobs, and jobs for people in bars and restaurants who can't just Zoom their way into work. Now, DeWine talked about that, too.
You know that you're inflicting pain on people and on small businesses, as you just pointed out. And so these are real people.
DeWine discussed that challenge for real people. Seems like he meant it empathetically. But he didn't use it as an excuse to back down on safety rules. He ordered lockdowns. He told constituents that while those concerns were certainly very real, they would not justify policies that just let people die. And DeWine soon found top Republicans in his state, like Senate candidate Josh Mandel, attacking him as both an authoritarian and a squishy Republican. I guess voters can decide what's worse. The pressure continued. One conservative lawmaker there demanding DeWine be indicted for those health orders. But DeWine's approach put Ohio ahead of many states, cases dropping. And the news tonight is Ohio is actually clearing the way for everyone there over 40 to get vaccinated. DeWine is touting the rebound, and experts are encouraged by the high demand for vaccines in that state. None of this means the governor should just get emergency powers forever. And while DeWine beat back those critics, this is interesting. He's also addressing the clash over these powers with a compromise based on the science. DeWine saying he'll give up some power on the same basis he took it, by following medical facts, and stating all his health orders will end when the caseload drops to a less dire level. And these clashes do go far beyond red Ohio. Take the very blue state of Connecticut. Democratic Governor Ned Lamont has seen protests over his emergency powers.
People want their businesses to be open. They want their churches to be open. They want their schools to be open. They want to be able to make incomes for their family. Governor Lamont wants to rule us for 11 months by executive order, and we're saying no.
Those kind of concerns have actually gotten farther in Connecticut than in some other states. Lamont clashing with conservatives, taking him to court to limit how he used his powers to shut down bars. And like the Ohio governor, Lamont insists that using emergency powers was vital to beating the pandemic, to getting testing, and he pushed back on critics in his state.
Look, whatever I'm doing with emergency powers is specifically related to COVID, nothing else. There's plenty else we need the legislature to opine in and weigh on.
Now, that may sound quite reasonable, but Lamont's finding the concern over one person having too much power forever, well, that matters in our system of government, whether it's a Supreme Court holding presidents in check, or at the state level, a Connecticut judge who just ruled partially against Lamont for doing so much through the unilateral powers without the legislature. The judge ruling Lamont cannot just go it alone indefinitely on COVID orders, finding he likely cannot continue to carry out his emergency orders without some form of ratification from the General Assembly. The court directed a moderate solution that the legislature keep the power to ratify emergency orders, and there must be time limits for them, with lawmakers voting on it all.
Lawmakers will meet tomorrow, in fact, to vote on whether the governor's emergency powers during the pandemic will continue.
It looks like those emergency powers will be extended through April in that state. Lamont continuing a mask mandate, while his administration says they are now going beyond the unilateral and consulting with the legislature.
They've been extended before, but the difference is now the legislature is in session. And the governor's chief of staff told us today that he has had informal talks with legislative leaders about another extension.
This is complex stuff. It can't just be boiled down to who's for or against science. Indeed, as we're reporting, some of the clashes about who makes the trade-offs, not pretending like there's simply no trade-offs to make. And these clashes are different, we should note, from some of the more partisan efforts by legislatures to simply kneecap a governor's power when one party loses elections. I mention that because it's a completely different story. It's a trick that North Carolina Republicans tried in 2016 to undercut the Democrat who beat them, a power grab that overlapped with voter discrimination efforts and sparked protests.
Let us in! Let us in! Whose house? Our house! Whose house? Our house! Whose house? Our house!
The people spoke, and they spoke powerfully, and they elected Roy Cooper as our next governor. And now they're trying to take Roy Cooper's powers away.
We saw a similar trick when Republican Trump supporter Scott Walker signed a bill to strip key powers that he had used, but strip them from the Democrat replacing him. Now, those were just tricks. But during this pandemic, there are also valid debates about who makes these life and death decisions. And we're not out of the woods yet as states debate ending these emergency powers and the rules on people socializing and rules on reopening schools and more clashes over how working people will get a voice for when they can work in person, plus the new fights on the horizon. We may have vaccines, but who decides if you can be required to prove that you're vaccinated, or decides whether vaccine passports are fair? Time and again, as governors in both parties have been stepping up, they do agree on one thing. From DeWine and Lamont to Cuomo, Abbott and Newsom, they all seem to think they should have more unilateral power. Which brings us back to the superheroes. They all brought that Dark Knight energy to these dilemmas, something that both Batman and Harvey Dent were warned about.
When their enemies were at the gates, the Romans would suspend democracy and appoint one man to protect the city. And it wasn't considered an honor, it was considered a public service.
Harvey, the last man that they appointed to protect the Republic was named Caesar, and he never gave up his power.
Okay, fine. You either die a hero, or you live long enough to see yourself become the villain.
Well, the classics apply because power still corrupts, especially in life and death emergencies. And we need better options than just those two from Harvey Dent. There will be more trade-offs to come. This will go on longer, but hopefully we can lean into some healthy debates about how to reopen and who makes the calls as we get through this together. Hey, I'm Ari Melber from MSNBC. You can see more of our videos right here, or better yet, subscribe to our YouTube channel below. You could have been anywhere in the world, but you're here with us, and we appreciate that.